Next up, we have the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers really had a pretty interesting offseason for them, um, as they ended up bringing back Victor Oladipo, but also traded Miles Turner to the Oklahoma City Thunder, mostly just for draft picks. So they're hoping for a lot of internal development and growth here for them, and it looks like they could definitely see that happen in guys like Domantas Sabonis, as well as Goga Bitadze. I'm absolutely certain I did not pronounce that one right, but oh well. So the Pacers, they come in off of a 13-7 campaign last season where they were the sixth seed in the Eastern Conference. They ended up losing to the Detroit Pistons in the first round, which was a very tough and competitive series. But the Pacers look to build upon that year after retooling a little bit, and they definitely could have gotten better. So let's take a look. They have Domantas Sabonis returning. He made the All-Star game last season, or 2 seasons ago, one of the two. But he's a very strong player, and really could have a very strong breakout season as he's just about to enter his prime. He's coming into his sixth season in the NBA at just 25 years old, and this is one of the best offensive players at the big man spot that you could ask for. His shooting touch is just amazing. He has great touch inside in the post, and then he's a pretty decent defender as well, and an excellent rebounder. So Sabonis looks to be holding down either that starting 4 or 5 spot, depending on what they want to do with Steven Adams here. But you could definitely go wrong, or you could definitely do a lot worse than starting your team off with a guy like Sabonis. And he still has 3 years left on his contract at 56.8 million. He'll be an unrestricted free agent by about 28, when he's about 28, excuse me. So he'll definitely be locking down a big contract once this one is up, because they definitely have him on a bargain as it stands currently. But then also coming back to the Pacers is Victor Oladipo. Oladipo signed a 4-year deal with the Pacers to stay. It's a 4-year, $161 million deal, so they definitely brought out the Brinks trucks for him. And he had a pretty solid season last year, putting up a career high 23.8 points, 5.5 rebounds, and then 4 assists as well, and almost 2 steals a game. He's a very efficient scorer at that 2 guard spot. Garnered a lot of interest in free agency this offseason before eventually ending back up with the Indiana Pacers. There was some rumors that he would be heading to Miami. If Giannis Antetokounmpo ended up staying with Milwaukee, he would have been a member of the Miami Heat. But as we all know, Giannis ended up bolting for the Miami Heat, and Oladipo came back to the Pacers on a pretty solid contract. So again, what Oladipo brings to the table, he's one of the most elite perimeter defenders in the game today. At 29, he's still in the peak of his career, so he can definitely still keep those scoring numbers up at 23 a game. Could even improve upon it as well if the season works out well for him. But he's just a tremendous scorer, one of the best two-way players in the league today. So Oladipo and Sabonis is definitely a strong 1-2 punch for them on the offensive end. And then defensively, they're both pretty stout as well. But then also returning to the Pacers is Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon is coming into his 6th season in the NBA at 28 years old. And what he brings to the table is just tremendous floor general. He's a tremendous floor general at that point guard spot. Just brings great stability to the team. Really efficient shooter. As you can see, he shot 47% from the floor and almost 45% from three last season. You hope that his scoring numbers can go up a little bit further. I mean, this is a guy that can probably average 18 to 20 points per game if the role was there. But as you can see, with him being the third option offensively behind Sabonis and Oladipo, Brogdon could be slotted for about a 14 point per game season while still shooting elite numbers from the floor and from behind the 3 point line. And he also has 2 years left on his deal. He'll be unrestricted in 2023 at 30 years old, looking to get that last long-term big contract. So we'll see what happens with Brogdon as his career keeps unfolding here with the Pacers. And really, he definitely rounds out their starting lineup very well. He's a great two-way player in his own right, an elite shooter, and a pretty solid playmaker at that point guard spot. So Brogdon, one of the true jack-of-all-trade point guards in today's game. And except instead of just being good at everything, he is very good at everything. This guy is he's just a baller, man. But next up is T.J. Warren. Warren was on the trade block for the Pacers throughout the offseason. They elected to stay with him, as he has had 2 decent seasons for them, especially shooting-wise. As you can see, he shot 51% from the floor in Season 1 and 47% from 3. So Warren can really fill it up and be an efficient scorer, whether it be in the starting lineup or off the bench. Defensively, he is a bit of a liability, as he's not a good defender at all at this point in his career, though he is 27 and just about to enter his prime, if not already there. So hopefully he can keep working on that defensive skill set of his, and really just become a more balanced player. But then you also have Steven Adams joining the Pacers on a very solid contract. This is one of the best bargains of the offseason. The Pacers got him on a 3-year, $31 million deal. And this guy's just 28. I mean, it feels like he's been in the league forever, but he's only entering his 9th season. So he had a brief stint with the Hawks as he was traded midway through Season 1 from the OKC Thunder to the Atlanta Hawks, and really had a pretty solid role for himself with the Hawks. But he could end up being a starter for the Pacers if they want to keep Sabonis at the 4 spot. Then they could definitely start Adams at the 5. If not, he'd be a excellent bench presence for them. He's just one of the strongest guys in the league today. Solid rebounder, great interior defender, and then he's a very good rim runner offensively as well. So Adams, just a great pickup all around for the Pacers here. But then they also have Aaron Holiday returning. Holiday had a very solid season last year for them, putting up almost 9 points a game while shooting 43% from the floor and 36% from 3. His role really increased last season, more than doubled his minutes from Season 1, as he got up to just over 18 minutes a game. So Holiday can have a pretty solid impact for this team. He can play next to either Brogdon or Oladipo or both in some lineups, as he mans that point guard spot. Brogdon, thanks to his versatility, can play the 2, and then Oladipo could even stretch to the 3. So Holiday can definitely have a very strong breakout season for them as he enters his 4th season in the NBA. He will be a restricted free agent after this season, as he was the 23rd pick in 2018. So he could definitely end up getting a pretty strong payday after this season if he ends up having a breakout year, which he could definitely do, as he has all of the all of the skill sets necessary to do so. But next you have Goga Bitadze. I don't fucking know, man. But Goga is he's out of the Republic of Georgia. Shout out to Zaza Pachulia. He was the 18th pick of the 2019 draft, just 22. This guy is very young. but very skilled at that center spot. He can take you outside, he can take you inside. He's a tremendous defender in the paint as well. The rebounding isn't quite there, but if you pair him with a guy like Sabonis, who's one of the elite rebounders at the power forward spot, Goga could really have a strong season for them if they elect to start him over Steven Adams, which they very well could be. I know Pacers management is very high on Goga and really expect him to have a strong season this year as he keeps developing and adding to his game. So Goga does have 2 years left on his rookie contract, and he'll be up for a big payday as well in 2023, so we'll see what happens with him. And then rounding out their team, they have Jeremy Lamb, the veteran guard out of Connecticut. He's entering his 10th season in the NBA, getting $10.5 million this year, and then he's expiring. He's 29, so he's in the prime of his career, and he's a great veteran shooter off of the bench for them, so he could definitely have a solid role. And then next is TJ Leaf. Leaf is a 5-year pro coming out of UCLA, or excuse me, a 4-year pro coming into his 5th season. Just 24, so he definitely has some room to grow still. And he is on a 2-year, $13.3 million deal. Just another shooter at that 4 or 5 spot for them. Really needs to work on his defensive game, but he's a great shooter and a pretty solid rebounder as well for his size. And then next we have Landers Nolley II. Nolley was taken with the 18th pick of this year's draft. Brings pretty good size to the table at that 2 or 3 spot at 6'7", 230 pounds. And this is another just a marksman coming out of the draft. He can definitely have a strong role for them as well off of the bench. He'll be relied upon really for some of their scoring in that second unit thanks to his shooting and marksmanship. So we'll see if he can have a strong season or a strong rookie campaign. And then finally we have Connor Vanover, a 7'3" big man, just tremendous size out of Arkansas, taken in the second round of this year's draft. 22 years old, so he has some experience playing the game, and he's a pretty decent shooter as well for a 7'3" guy, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get any playing time at that 5 spot, but they are pretty loaded in their front court already. And then we have Romello White rounding out their team. Another second round pick, picked late in the draft this year, 23, pretty much a 4-year starter at Arizona State. So we'll see if he can have an impact as well. He's going to be a pretty hard worker for what he brings to the table, but really at this point not an NBA player, but we'll see if he can really grow and develop his game and become a rotation guy. So that does it for the Indiana Pacers. Like I said, they were, I think, the 6th seed last season. Again, they're going to be looking to try and get home court this season. They did lose Miles Turner after trading him to the Thunder, and really all they got out of him was picks, but they're really hoping for some internal development here from Goga, from guys like TJ Leaf, and then some of their rookies like Landers Nolley and Connor Vanover, who can really provide an impact as rookies for this team. But they also did bring in Steven Adams, but again, they do have Domantas Sabonis holding down either that 4 or 5 spot for them. And he's primed for a huge season after a strong offseason, working out and just getting better and really honing his craft. So Indiana's going to be a very interesting team to look at moving forward. And finally, we have the Detroit Pistons, who were the 3rd seed last season in a tough Eastern Conference. They went 17-6 on the year, very strong record. But they ended up having quite the eventful offseason. They really, not even retooled, they really just revamped their roster. They do have DeMar DeRozan returning, as well as DeAnthony Melton. But one of the biggest moves in the offseason was their trade of Andre Drummond. They dealt Drummond to the Boston Celtics and got really quite a huge haul for him. Starting off, they got Jaylen Brown in that deal. Brown was taken with the third pick of the 2016 draft and is really one of the most highly coveted young players in today's league. He did put up 15 points a game last season, along with 5.5 boards and 4 assists. They're hoping that those numbers really increase tenfold for the Pistons. This is a guy that really has the talent to have a Paul George type of career where he can start averaging 20, 23, 24 points a game as their main option offensively. And then defensively, he is a standout as well. Just one of the better perimeter defenders in the Eastern Conference. This guy, he is primed for a huge season as the number one option for Detroit. And they're really going to be banking on him becoming that guy because, again, this is a third seed team that had a very strong season last year. They lost in the second round to the Philadelphia 76ers, but that was a great team that they had, and they ended up almost blowing it up. But what they get back is a guy like Jaylen Brown, who is very young still, just 24, on a 3-year, $83 million contract still. So they have him locked down for the long term. They're hoping that he can really develop and grow into an all-star type of player. But then returning, they have DeMar DeRozan, who they signed last summer to a 3-year deal. DeRozan still has $33.3 million left on this year, and then a player option for almost $35 million next season. And his numbers kind of fell off a bit in Detroit. Fell to just 15.5 points a game as he kind of took the backseat to Andre Drummond offensively. But his field goal percentage was a career high for him. He shot 50.7% from the floor. His three ball really took a dip, went down to 17.8% from three. But they know exactly what they're getting out of DeRozan, and that is one of the premier slashers in today's game. He could really pair well with a guy like Jaylen Brown along the perimeter. So it'll be really fun to see those two kind of gel offensively, as they kind of have some similar games. Obviously, Brown being the better shooter and defender, but DeRozan is a very stout playmaker at that 3 spot, and again, one of the best slashers in the game. So that's a pretty solid 1-2 punch that they have there offensively. But next they have DeAnthony Melton coming back to the team. Melton is on a 2-year deal yet, making $4.17 million this year, and then a player option for $4.37 next season. And he had a pretty strong season for them last season, putting up almost 7 points a game and 5 assists a game last year, shooting 52% and 31% from 3. So Melton could definitely have an increased role with this Pistons squad. He did just play 20 minutes a game last year, but that could go up to 30. As really he is kind of the top point guard for this team right now as it stands currently. He's a tremendous defender, good athlete for a 6'2", 200-pound guard, and he's a pretty good floor general in his own right. The shooting isn't quite there, which kind of could be a clash of a play style with DeMar DeRozan, as well as Robert Williams, who they picked up in that Andre Drummond trade. But Melton could definitely have a breakout year at 23 years old, heading into his 4th season in the league. Next, we have Bojan Bogdanovic. Bojan left the Jazz via trade. He was part of that Drummond deal. And what they get back out of Bojan is just one of the elite marksmen in the league. This guy can shoot. Whether you're guarding him or not, he's going to shoot it, and a good chunk of the time he's going to make it. His 3-ball percentage really fell off a bit in Utah. Fell to just 35.5% in Season 1 and then 36.5% in Season 2. So Detroit's hoping that he can get back up to 40% from 3, as he really has all the ability to do so. And with him coming into the Pistons, his role isn't going to be quite as heavy as it was in Utah, where he was really relied upon to be, that second or third option offensively for them. So Bojan can definitely get some open looks thanks to the slashing capabilities of Brown, DeRozan, and Melton. Bojan can really have a strong bounce back season, get back up to 15, 16 points a game for the Pistons, and shooting, over 40% from three. So it'll be interesting to see how Bogdanovich really starts to exit his prime. He's still a tremendous player and a great shooter, pretty solid defender, and an underrated playmaker as well at that 3 or 4 spot. So I imagine he'll be starting at either the 3 or the 4 for Detroit, or even coming off of the bench in a super sub type of role where he'll just have the green light to launch from deep. But next year we have Robert Williams, who's looking to be Detroit's starting center. He did start for the Boston Celtics the last 2 seasons, to kind of mixed results. He was a tremendous rebounder and shot blocker, but his defense did struggle a little bit thanks to his size. He is only 6'8", 237 pounds, so he's a little undersized at that 5 spot, but he does have a long reach and wingspan to make up for that, as well as very good athleticism and shot blocking instincts. So Williams, still very young, just 23, has a lot of room to grow yet as a starter. And Detroit, he's going to have some big shoes to fill with the departure of Andre Drummond. He's really going to be relied upon as that anchor in the middle on both ends of the floor for them. So we'll see if he can have a strong breakout season in Detroit. He did put up 6 points and 10.5 rebounds a game last season, both career highs, as well as 2 blocks a game, also a career high. And he did shoot 55% from the floor. You hope that, a rim runner like him can get up to about 60% from the floor at least. But we'll see what happens with him. He will be entering his 4th season, so he will be a restricted free agent after this season. So hopefully Detroit can lock him down for the long term and keep him around as that starting 5. But then they also added Monte Morris via free agency on a 2-year, $21.5 million deal, which is a very good pickup for them. Morris is a tremendous scorer at that point guard spot. He's a blur, man. He's very quick, very shifty guard, with great ball handling skills and pretty good passing vision as well. Though he is a liability on the defensive end, he could even start for this Pistons squad thanks to that shooting and scoring ability. And even guys like Williams, even Bogdanovich, Brown, and DeRozan, they're all solid enough defenders that I think Morris could definitely start at that point guard spot for them and really have a strong role. So we'll see what happens with Monte Morris, as he had 2 strong seasons in Denver before falling off a bit last season during their quote-unquote youth movement. So Morris, again, could get back up to about 10, 12 points a game for this squad and really have a strong season. Next, we have Sekou Doumbouya. Doumbouya, coming out of France, was picked with the 15th pick of the 2019 draft. And man, this guy had a breakout season last year for them, putting up 13 and 5 a game, along with 1.5 steals. He did shoot very well from the floor and behind the arc, shooting 62.5% from the floor and then 36.5% from 3. So this guy, he could definitely be a starter at that 4 spot. He's a very good perimeter defender, very good athlete for his size at 6'8", 230, and he's that shooting is really coming around, man. He can definitely be a strong 3-and-D player with some explosive capabilities, finishing at the rim or getting some highlight plays on defense. So they're very high on this guy in Detroit. It wouldn't surprise me if they ended up making him the day one starter at the 4 spot next to Robert Williams. So we'll see what happens with Damboya moving forward. Next, we have Jordan Nwora. Nwora had a strong rookie season as he was in the Rookie of the Year race, putting up 14.5 points, shooting very well, especially from the 3-point line, putting up 44% from behind the arc. He was taken with the with the 17th pick of the 2020 draft last year. So he'll be coming into his second season now with some pretty high expectations. This is a guy that really wasn't expected to have the season that he had last year, but now he's going to be on a lot of teams' radars moving forward. Teams are going to start game planning for shooting off of the bench, and we'll see what happens, whether he can adjust or not. He isn't quite the defender that you want him to be at that 3 or 2 guard spot. As he is 6'7", 225. You really expect him to be a better defender than he is, but the mentality quite isn't there yet. We'll see if that ends up developing further. But what he brings to the table is definitely just an elite shooter and a very good scorer all around the court. So Nwora could have another strong showing for the Pistons. Rounding out their roster, they have Mason Plumlee joining the team on a 1-year, $6 million deal, and then a player option for $6.3 million next season. Plumlee is just he's one of the reliable bench bigs in the league that will come in, hustle, grind, do all the little things for your team, whether that be playing great team defense inside, getting boards, or just finishing hustle plays on the offensive end. So Plumlee, a great addition to this squad. Next we have Paul Reed. Reed was taken with the 24th pick of this year's draft, of last year's draft. Excuse me, I'm getting my years mixed up. But Reed is he's a strong player for what he brings to the table. Put up 7.5 points last year in his rookie campaign, along with 3.5 boards. And he's another power forward that can play the 5 spot. Not necessarily best suited there, but he could definitely play some small ball 5 minutes for them. So we'll see how much he can grow in his second season. He does have a lot of depth in front of him in that front court, though. So hopefully he can grind out some minutes and really earn some playing time for this team. But then they have Jeremy Roach, the guard out of Duke, taken with the 26th pick of this year's draft. Roach brings tough defense to the floor, along with some good floor general capabilities running that point guard spot. He's big enough that he can play the 2 guard spot, but with him being that kind of lockdown guy on defense and then come down on the other end and run the show for you, you really just want him at that point guard spot. The shooting isn't quite there yet, but he does have good form on it and can definitely develop that further as he gets older. He is just 19, entering his rookie season, so not a lot of expectations for him as he's behind Monte Morris and DeAnthony Melton, but he could be a solid player down the line for them. Next up we have Boban Marjanovic. So they have Bojan Bogdanovic and Boban Marjanovic on this team. Boban, obviously the 7'4" vet out of Serbia, entering his 7th season in the league, 32. Even if this guy, starts to wear down, which his body most likely will as he exits his prime here, he probably won't play too much longer. Even though his body might start failing him a little bit, this guy is still a absolute nightmare to try and match up against, thanks to that size and even inside touch inside the post. Defensively, he's definitely falling off as he starts to lose some steps, really steps that he never even had in the first place. But he obviously, thanks to that big body, he's going to be tough to score on inside. So you really just have to try your best to try and run him off the floor. We'll see if he is the main backup big man for Robert Williams, or if they go to Mason Plumlee or even Paul Reed more off of the bench. So we'll see what happens there with Boban. And then rounding out the roster, we have C.J. Walker Jr., a second-round pick out of Oregon, just 20 years old at that 3 spot, and he brings good defense, decent shooting, not quite there yet, but he's a good athlete along the perimeter. And then Troy Daniels, just an elite marksman. Even if he's not really an NBA caliber player elsewhere, this guy can come in and knock down some timely shots, especially behind the arc for you. And then finally we have Micah Potter, second round pick out of Wisconsin, another big man, good size at 6'10", 250, and a pretty solid shooter as well. And he's just 22, so he can definitely carve out a niche role for him on this Piston squad. But that does it for the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, this is a very talented team that underwent a huge overhaul in the offseason, bringing in guys like Jaylen Brown, not DeAnthony Melton, he was already there, Bojan Bogdanovic, Robert Williams, Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee, and then Boban Marjanovic, and a bunch of rookie prospects. So this team definitely has the ability to make it back to the playoffs. I'm not sure if they'll be able to make the 3rd seed again with some teams in the East improving, but I think they'll be almost a lock for the playoffs as long as Jaylen Brown really has a breakout season for them, like we're all expecting him to. This guy should be an all-star this season, but we'll see if that happens. So that does it for the Central Division. A lot of youth in this division. You know, one of the most electric young teams in the Chicago Bulls with Cade Cunningham and Anthony Edwards, as well as Wendell Carter and Lauri Markkanen and even Brandon Clark now. They really have the ability to become a strong team in the Eastern Conference. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they brought back Kyrie Irving last year, and they really surrounded him with some great vets. And they still have Rookie of the Year Vernon Carey coming back to them as well. Then you also have the Milwaukee Bucks, who lost Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're kind of looking to revamp their roster, but they still have some quality vets and some young talent on that team as well, in Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe. Obviously those guys being the vets, Brook Lopez, but then they have young guys like Killian Hayes and Brandon Boston. And then also the Detroit Pistons, who were the 3rd seed last season, again revamping their roster, bringing in Jaylen Brown and guys like that after trading Andre Drummond. And then the Indiana Pacers, who had a strong offseason as well, bringing back Victor Oladipo and bringing in Steven Adams to replace Miles Turner. And they have a lot of internal development going on with that player development system. So this is going to be a very fun division to watch moving forward, thanks to the young stars as well as the veteran guys like Kyrie, DeMar DeRozan, guys like that. It's just going to be a very fun and tough division to watch. That does it for the Central Division. Next, we'll be looking at the Atlantic, featuring the Philadelphia 76ers, Toronto Raptors, Brooklyn Nets, the Boston Celtics, and the New York Knicks. And then that will do it for our season preview, and then we'll be able to get things underway. So thanks guys for sticking around. We'll get that Atlantic video up as soon as possible, and then hopefully the season will be underway by then. So thanks. This is Jazzy signing out. I'll catch you all later. Thanks.